Hello, everyone. Welcome to the webinar about customizing your questionnaires and reports using CSS. Welcome, everyone. I'm Bruno. I'm the product director at Pointerpro, and I'm here today to teach you a little bit about using CSS, but I'm going to make it easy and I'm going to keep it light. So that people that haven't touched it yet are able to get their first steps in, but also people that know CSS are able to find their way in our platform and know where those capabilities are hidden and how to get the most out of your questionnaires and your reports. So our agenda for today, I'll quickly explain what CSS actually is. Another one of those abbreviations we all know and love, but it actually stands for something. How you can add it inside of our tool, how to actually use CSS, where to find whatever you need, because this is going to be a very basic kind of training. So you won't be able to do everything just out of the box after this training. I'll show you some example pieces of code and explain what they allow you to do, and then we have time for Q&A as well. But feel free to drop your questions in the chat, and we'll see if we can hop on those questions immediately or if we can save them till the end. All right, let's go. Maybe before we actually start the explanation, I am going to see if this poll here actually works. I'm gonna submit it. Apparently it doesn't want to work. Okay. Oh, I think it's been published. I don't know if people can see it in the chat. Yeah, all right, awesome. So quick poll, have you used CSS before, yes or no? Easy question, but that gives us some inspiration on how people are using it. Now, CSS actually is surprisingly common. You might not know this, but the entire internet is full of web pages that are basically built with HTML and CSS. And the big difference there, HTML you might know because it's the little extension at the end of a link at for some links. But HTML is actually used to create the content and the structure of a website. So it's basically a hypertext markup language. So it's the language that describes how it's structured. And CSS is basically its counterpart that allows you to define how to design and how to display these elements that you make with HTML. And CSS stands for cascading style sheets. So basically, the style is applied in multiple levels on those objects in HTML. So that's the difference. So a very important distinguishment there is that HTML is that structure. So that means with CSS, there's fairly little you can change about the structure, but it does allow you to change the styling. And so basically every website you've seen in your life actually has some layer of CSS or probably dozens of layers of CSS on there, which also means that the knowledge that I'm going to try and transfer to you today can be applied in probably a multitude of tools out there, because CSS is just the standard of describing how something is styled. So maybe a simplified comparison is that HTML is basically the skeleton of a website. It's the structure. It's what makes it stand upright. CSS is the skin and the clothes that you put on top of it to make it look nice and presentable. And there's a little other counterpart next to it that's called JavaScript that allows you to, it's a scripting language. It allows you to create behaviors as well. So that's something you can use to make it dynamic and make it smarter. So that they call that the brain. We're not going to cover JavaScript. That's going to be a little bit too advanced, but CSS is something that's definitely manageable, even if you've never touched or written a single letter of code in your life. So basically, there's two ways that you can apply JavaScript inside of our platform. You'll see on the top there, you can apply it directly on objects themselves. So for example, in text inside of a questionnaire or inside of the report, there's this little button there that nobody dares click, but it's the button with the two brackets there to enable what we call HTML mode. So it opens the HTML code of the content of that text box. And you'll see in there a lot of colorful codes in there that help you structure the file. So it allows you to update the content of that widget in HTML. But in there, you can also apply styling in CSS as well. And I'll show you how in one of the next slides. Another way is through a dedicated file. In a questionnaire, you can upload a file as well. You see that on those three stacked screenshots there on the side. So you can upload a CSS file that just applies to the entire questionnaire. And in a report, we have another one of those buttons hidden away there at the top that allows you to add CSS directly into the entire report. But that CSS, again, is applied to the entire report. Now, there's pros and cons to all of these things. I'm going to try and keep it simple. If you apply it directly to one of these objects, there's no question you can't mistakenly add styles to something different than what you implied. So you basically put the clothes directly onto the doll at that point. So that's easier to write, but it means that it's there specifically. So if you want to change something, you have to go back to that exact place in the code and change it there. The other option is the dedicated file. Basically, it allows you to write code and basically CSS code that you can apply to multiple objects in one go. So for example, all the buttons need to look this way. All my links need to look purple. All my God knows what, all my headers need to look orange. All of that stuff you can basically have in one line of CSS and apply it throughout the entire document. And it's easier to maintain that way because if you say orange isn't my color, I want it in green, you can just apply it directly for the entire thing. But that means you have to select those objects in code as well, which is a little bit harder to do sometimes. Now, how does that work specifically? We've got those selectors. So I'm diving a little bit deeper now into the file structure there. If you're using those files, you have to select those objects, and those can be selected using a few methods. So you can do that by ID, for example, class, and by a type of an object. As the people that use Reporter will probably know, if you hit on the settings button on a widget, the first thing you'll see there is an ID. So that's basically what you can use to add CSS to that object specifically. You can just type hashtag and then the ID code and then start describing what you want the style on that object to be. Same goes for class, but then you have to use a dot as an indicator. But that means that all objects that have that class will basically automatically get that CSS applied. And for example, for charts or for tables or something like that, you could have something that says all my tables will be styled this way, and you have to define it only once. Then obviously you've selected the object, you want it to look or behave a different way than the default or what we can already do inside of the platform. And then you have to describe what that is that you want it to do. So typical things that you could do is add spacing, like adding a margin at the top, so leaving some extra breathing room there. Changing the color, which is definitely a very interesting one in terms of having your very own custom branding. If you have like one of those specific colors that are so key to your brand. You can use those in CSS if the interface doesn't allow you to find it directly. Text alignment, but there's hundreds, really hundreds more of options that I can't possibly list in this webinar. So going back a little bit, we want to apply CSS. We just need a little bit. We just want an indentation, for example, for the first part of my text block. Then you can go inside of the object, and you can add the code that I've highlighted there as well, which is basically style equals, and then between quotes, the description of what you want it to do. So margin left 30 pixels, and that's going to move that object, just shift it 30 pixels to the side. So that's an easy way to feel and get used to using very basic CSS. This is the way to get that one line moved and not the entire object moved, which is typically one of those issues that people face when they're trying to get used to CSS for the first time. It's very very finicky if you're not that used to it yet. But the good thing is you can try, you can remove it afterwards, and no harm done. So this is something you can do inside of a questionnaire. You can do it inside of a report. You can do it inside emails as well. So people sending out very nicely styled HTML emails might know. This is all very, very common stuff. Now, a slightly more difficult, but still a very simple way of adding CSS is inside of a report. So like I said, we've got those IDs. So as you can see there underneath the Save button, there's a settings tab, and right underneath there it says the code of the ID, and there's even a little copy button, so you don't have to worry about getting that value. And if you add that to the CSS of a report, like I did on the left side, so hashtag and then the ID, then between curly brackets, you can write all the statements you want. So for example, in this case, I just said color has to be red, but that could be one of those hex codes or whatever you want to define your specific brand color. It could be a border that you want to draw around something. It could be the margins that you're playing with, text alignments. There's again, hundreds and hundreds of options that you can apply. And this way, only that one specific widget inside of your report will be updated with that specific styling. So going a little bit more advanced, and this is where it gets slightly more tricky, it allows you to basically tweak almost anything inside of a report. So this really breaks most of the boundaries that we've built inside of the platform. And it allows you to customize fully. So this is basically what you could do to a chart is remove some of these lines. You can change the color of some of these lines. You can change the colors of so many of the objects in there in order to make it feel like you want it to be presented inside of a report, or make it fit the style of the report as well. So that's really the purpose of using CSS. Those small finicky things aren't going to probably be reason enough, but this is what we allow people to use CSS for, is so that you have that ultimate flexibility to get from a very pixel perfect design, probably made in some kind of a Photoshop or a design software that doesn't keep in mind what the restraints are or the limitations are of the tool that you're using, but really start kind of fine-tuning everything until you have even the smallest detail almost pixel perfect. So the step up from that is what we call combinations, and that's basically you can use all of those selectors in combination in order to get something very, very specific. And that's where the biggest difficulty of CSS is, which I would not recommend to start with. But I mean, this is something to keep in mind, that the problem with selecting the right object lies to selecting only that specific object or a specific type of object. But if you want to kind of limit that, or if you want to dig deeper or very, very specific things, you might need to redefine your selector. And this is one of those ways that you can do it. You can combine that ID that we have inside of the menu, go into a type of HTML object in there, then you need to know how, but I'll explain you later how you can figure that out. Find the class of a specific object. So it needs, in this case, it wouldn't have to be an object called G, which probably stands for graphic, with this specific class. And then underneath, I want all the objects that are the type path. And those are the ones that I'm going to target, and I'm going to make them light gray in this case. So this is finding that specificity of this is what I need, this is what I want to change. In most cases, it doesn't need to go this far, but when you want to change something very specific in one specific chart, you might need to get closer to this. Now, how do you find that? Well, the fun thing is, for the people that use Google Chrome, there is an inspect mode on basically, well, it's built inside of the tool, so you can use it on any website. So you can also use it on our report while you're actually building it. So if you right-click on a widget and you hit inspect, it actually opens the HTML view of that one specific page. And it'll open with the object that you selected already highlighted. So it'll jump immediately to that point. And then if you hover over them, like in the right screenshot, if you hover over them, you'll see them being highlighted in the actual report builder as well. So that allows you to kind of find the right object. And inside of the code, for example, the one highlighted now, I know it's probably going to be pretty small, but you'll find something that says class equals and then some text. You'll find other stuff sometimes as well, like ID equals, and then those are the things that you want to see. So if you follow the orange arrow there down, you can see that the line that I'm hovering on is actually selected, and it says this is type path, and the class is high charts grid line. So that's basically allowing you to find that one specific selector. You just use that, open the curly brackets, define what you want it to do. For example, if you want to hide this specific, well, it's going to hide more because I know it's a class that triggers more. If you want to hide that line, you can do that with CSS. Now, there's a bunch of things that you can do, and this has been very theoretical so far, so I apologize for that, but it's just the basics that you need to understand before we jump into the nitty-gritty part. You can change a lot. So again, I already mentioned brand coloring is one of those very popular ones. Hiding stuff, especially components of a chart, is very popular as well. The reason why we don't have options for all of these is because if we have to build a menu item for all of these CSS options, then we would have so many menu items that you wouldn't find the one that you wanted anymore, and you would complain about the amount of menu items in there as well. So we try to focus on the ones that we think are the most important ones, and all the other ones you can still fall back on CSS to arrange. And then we try to update those if we see people are using them a lot. Then we try to make interface options for those. Aligning text is also a popular one. Setting margins is also one of them. Now we already have a margins option inside of the tool, but you can actually set margins and padding on the same object. So I put a screenshot in there to help you to help you understand that actually. Because padding is inside of the objects and margins are outside. So for example, for this text widget, if you would have a background image or a background color for that one specific widget, everything, including the padding area, will have that background color, but the margins are outside of the widget, so they would be white or whatever, well, transparent, so you would see the background of your page. So those are the things that kind of make it slightly more complex. So that's what I'm trying to say here is you will probably need to play around a little bit and Google some of these things to figure out what exactly you want if you've never done it before. But the fun thing is it is very forgiving. So if you say this didn't work, I'm just cutting it back out of my report, everything will be back the way it was. Now, some fun examples, and this is way more powerful than just changing one small things, but there's some things that you can do. So for example, column widths on a response table, for example, the code with the black background there, for example, is one of those ways that you could use, well, basically tweak that using CSS and immediately even assign alignments within those columns. So you see that you don't need that much extra work to make it behave exactly the way you want. The next one is no pre-selected slider value. It's also a popular one that I wrote a while ago. Sometimes people are confused that the slider inside of a questionnaire is already, it seems like it selected the lowest value, but it actually didn't select it. So with that piece of code, you can just, it doesn't show up. The slider looks like nothing was selected, so you have to click somewhere on the slider before it starts selecting the first value. But you can also upload custom fonts. Also very interesting in terms of custom branding. You can upload your font inside of your questionnaire or inside of your report, and then either that section that you selected it for or the entire report is automatically printed in that font. For example, something else that you can do is sticking the buttons of a questionnaire below the actual lowest question. So as you might know, you might have longer questions that don't really fit on the screen, so you need to scroll. But the button kind of floats on the screen at the bottom of your screen. So you scroll behind the button. But using those basically, well, 5 lines, if you don't count closing the curly brackets of CSS, you can actually just stick those buttons all the way below the lowest question. So you don't see the buttons unless you scroll all the way down. Again, it's only 5 lines of code. For people that are interested, by the way, in these examples, send us a message after the webinar, and we'll send you those codes so you can copy paste them inside of your questionnaires. Now for the font, obviously you might want to select the font because I selected the NASA font in this example, so I don't think that's going to be very popular, but you have to find the URL of somewhere where the font is hosted so you can link it that way. Another one is bigger sliders because they're kind of thin. Sometimes that kind of feels like they're blending in with the background, so you can make them a little bit thicker. Again, just a few lines of code, and there you go. Now these are very, very small things, so you can go very far. We've done quite a few projects for clients writing CSS for them and customizing reports, and then we sometimes end up with over 1,000 lines of code to make something very, very perfect over the entire process or over the entire report and questionnaire. But it depends how far you want to go. The thing is, there is no limit. So you can have 20,000 lines of code of CSS, that's fine. There is so much you can do. Actually, there is so much you can do that we can't cover everything, especially not in this webinar. But some things might not make sense for you either. But it's interesting to know what CSS can do because it is very powerful. So there's ways, for example, media queries is something that happens sometimes in questionnaires. So that helps you make these questionnaires more responsive. For example, if the screen is smaller than this specific resolution, I don't want to show the background image. So stuff like that is something you could do with media queries. Animations, like the little example I put there on the top, you can make it very ugly and very confusing for people by making buttons spin, but there's so much more animations that you could theoretically do. Those are all things with CSS. This spinning button, I think it was less than 10 lines of code, I think. Image masking, so basically it's some kind of a post-processing on images, flex boxes, calculations in CSS. I mean, there's so many more things that you can do, but again, these are quite complex. So don't dive too deep into that. Find someone to help you because it's going to take some time to figure out how that actually works. Now, it is important to know that it does work. And there's a very fair warning that I want to give you as well, that comes along with using CSS. Especially the biggest one is that selecting the wrong objects, or if you're using a class, everything that uses that class will be updated. So if you're using it, don't just double check that one widget. Go through your entire report, go through your entire questionnaire to validate that you didn't by mistake select something else as well. And the same goes with those declarations. Some declarations, like moving stuff, can have effects by, for example, creating some kind of an overlay that is undesired, or just kind of feeling unbalanced, stuff like that. So it is very, it's finicky. You have to double check all of the work that you do, but it comes at that's basically the cost of having that almost unlimited freedom. Also very important is that, CSS, like I mentioned at the beginning, there's multiple layers of CSS. So by default, we add CSS to all of the web pages that you see. And that means that we might be already styling some of these objects. And then you're adding your own style on top, which might contradict each other, which might kind of interfere with each other. So it could be a little bit sensitive. So again, test and validate. And the thing that makes CSS quite difficult as well is that it depends sometimes on the object that you're styling. So not all objects can accept all kind of declarations, and sometimes there's these, especially with colors, is an easy example. There's different kind of keywords that apply to different kind of objects in HTML. So for example, if you use fill red, that's something that would work on the axis of a chart. And that way you can color those lines of a chart. Color red is something that works to change the text color of a text widget, for example, but fill wouldn't work and color wouldn't work on the chart. And stroke, for example, is something that's used to change the color of the lines of a chart. So these are the finicky things that come together with CSS. So it comes down to, you will have to do some looking up if you don't know CSS yet. But the thing is, it's so popular. There's so many resources out there that you can use to find inspiration. So you might need to test a few things in order to find the thing that works. Now, charts are very complicated because it's one big object made out of very tiny pieces. So that's a special case. For text widgets, for images, for columns, stuff like that, you wouldn't probably, the chance of you hitting something like this is fairly small. So don't be too discouraged there. And also keep in mind, it's not, well, more CSS does not equal a better result necessarily. It comes at a cost. It takes some time to configure. One line of CSS is easy to add. 2 lines is still okay, but the more lines you add, the more complexity you're adding, and it's something that needs to be maintained. So I think that's quite logical. It's the same with a Word document. 1 page is easily updated. 50 pages takes more time to process. So keep that in mind. It is definitely possible. The great thing is, we've done so many custom designs with professional services for a number of clients. by people that actually know coding and that do this day in and day out, so they can do it a lot faster, and they know where to look. They know all of the ins and outs and tips and tricks, and they can basically take it one step further. But they can also add JavaScript, for example, inside of questionnaires or inside of reports, which is something that's not possible for end users of our platform. For security reasons, but from a developer's point of view, we can add those extra customization options as well. So what I'm trying to say is, don't be discouraged by the limitations that you see, because there is so much more possible. We've got some example pieces of code for so many things lying around that we might be able to help you with. If not, then there's always professional services that you can count on to help you kind of customize your styling for you, or customize a part of your report, for example. And basically it's the sky's the limit there. Now, I'm just going to jump immediately into Q&A, because I've been talking for a while. And I have no idea if what I'm saying is actually making any sense to people. So I'm going to start reading the comments. I already see that some people are reacting. So I'm just going to scroll back up and go from the top. I see Martijn here. Hi, Martijn. Where do you get these specific names of objects like highcharts, y-axis grid, for example? So like I said, what I always do is I go to the questionnaire builder, I right-click on the chart, and then it opens the HTML view, and that's kind of like a tree structure. So everything's nested inside of each other. And as you hover over all of these items inside of the inspector, you will see them light up in the actual questionnaire builder or in the report builder. So you can see which ones you're selecting. Now, the one that you're mentioning there, high charts, y-axis grid, that's a class. So for those things, you would see class equals and then quote, and that would be one of the keywords there. That's basically the short version of how you find that. The easiest way to start playing around with that might not be using charts. So again, charts is something, again, one big object with a lot of layers. So it's kind of difficult to find the exact thing that you need. For example, for text widgets, images, columns and stuff like that, it's going to be a lot easier because the structure is a lot less complex. I hope that helps, but I'll scroll down to see if you respond. Jason, hi Jason. Is there also something like ID in the questionnaire? No, for most things, they aren't exposed. So there might be some IDs that you can find using the inspector tool, like in the report. I always recommend load a preview in a separate tab and open the inspector on there so that you can see it as it actually is presented. For a questionnaire, it typically comes back down to classes to be used, but there might be some. There's so many that I don't know all of them even. And is it also possible to change colors in the pie chart or the spider charts instead of, yeah. So there's some options in there as well. Now for pie charts and spider charts, I think a lot of these things have options inside of the menu. So I always recommend, if you can use the menu items that we've built, please, for the love of God, use those, because they're there for a reason, and they will make your life a lot easier. But also it makes more sense when, for example, at some point you reach out to support, the first thing they're going to look for is inside of those settings, rather than scroll to a big list of CSS code to find what's actually causing an issue. So yeah, there's definitely options to play with those colors as well. Can you edit columns in a table object? Hi Nata, by the way, like set the column width. So yeah, definitely the example I showed a few slides ago. And if you need that example, just send us a message after the webinar. My email is on the screen, by the way, for the people that don't have it. We can send you that piece of example code on how it works, and you can copy paste it in there, and then you can start tweaking it as you need. The example here, we'll send this maybe for 3 columns, you might have 4. So there's some tweaking you might need to do, but it will be fairly self-explanatory. Especially in tables, there's a lot of fun stuff that you can do, because you're working with borders, you're working possibly with spaces, spacing inside of table cells, alignment inside of those columns, the width of those columns, even having a table that isn't the full width of the report page. There's a lot of fun stuff you can do with tables in CSS. Hi, Frank. Is this information found in the reporting help guides as well? I think we have some help guides where some excerpts of CSS are shared. We will be updating the help guides at some point of getting some of these pieces of CSS in there, but because of every report being slightly different, all of the IDs are different. We don't have that much exposed, maybe, but for example, for the things that you've seen today, you can definitely reach out. We can just copy paste that and mail that to you. If there's other specific questions, you can also obviously ask them, and we can see if we maybe have some pieces of code there as well. But there's one big thing that I maybe forgot to mention. I always recommend, like, CSS is the way to go there. It's not the place to experiment and just dream up stuff and see, hey, what else can I do? It's always best to have like a design or like a vision of like, this is where I want to go, and then try it with CSS to get there, so that you have something to search for, because there's so much possible with CSS that you won't find the right thing immediately. I can see you also just responded as well, like AI like ChatGPT can indeed generate CSS code. It is fairly accurate. The big problem with AIs is that they don't really interface with other tools, so they don't know exactly which class to find. So the finding of the selector and making sure that like I said, for those colors, that they use the right type of declaration for that type of object, there might be some gaps in there, but it's definitely worth a try. So we've played around with writing some dummy code with AI as well to test what it actually does. So there are some things that actually work. And again, you can just paste it inside of your report, see what it does. Does it work? Does it not work? Just select it, delete it again, hit save, problem solved. So there's no harm done at any point. I'm scrolling back up. Hi, Nick. Can you share these slides with us? Yeah, definitely. So this will be, well, it's already being recorded. It's also going to be uploaded. So you can rewatch the webinar. We can share slides as well, and we can share the pieces of code that you need. And again, if you find other things that you might want, reach out to support or to me. We'll see if we have something lying around, or if we know by heart how to solve that. Liana, hi there. Is there a simpler way to customize report assessment for professional package, especially if I don't have knowledge of CSS? Well, the questionnaires are well, they have some options, and you probably know them inside of the design tab. So there are some options in there. There's quite a few styling options regarding text inside of those question, the box where you type in your question. So there's those stylings, but aside from really going deep other than CSS, we don't have anything. So we fall back to CSS as that's the most common standard in the digital industry, if I can call it that. So up to a point, yes, you can use the interface, and there's quite a few options. But at some point, CSS is basically the only fallback other than that interface. And Nata also already mentioned CSS isn't included in the professional plan, and yeah, also neither is the report builder. But if you have that need to customize further, then maybe a higher plan is the better option. I'm asking. So yeah, I think indeed, if there's no CSS, then indeed it's only the standard options of the interface that we have. But feel free to reach out, even if you feel like I'm trying to arrange something specifically. Maybe there's something else that we can do on our end to help you further along. All right. Any other questions that anyone might think of? Feel free to ask at any point. I'm just going to go over to the next slide. Want to learn more? I hope so. I hope I got some people warm into the idea of trying to play around with CSS. I, as someone who's been writing CSS code for probably like 20-ish years, I still go on Google and I ask my questions and I find some of the codes online. So there's no shame in that. There's just so much out there. I don't do it full time, obviously. Otherwise, I might not have to do that. But still, one of those common sources of information is W3 Schools. The link's here. But you can just Google like CSS, I want to do this. And it will probably have thousands of pages of people giving you examples of how to do it, of example code, which might not be completely copy-pastable, again, because the selectors will be different, but there's so much information out there to help you get started. So that's the main advantage of using CSS rather than something more obscure. It is known by almost everyone that designs something on the internet. So there's a lot of people that can help you. And if you are looking for a professional to help you, the chance that they know design but they don't know CSS is practically non-existent. But that's all for now, folks. I don't know if there's any other questions. I don't see people typing, so I would like to thank everyone for joining the webinar. I hope you learned something. Again, keep my email in mind. I'm going to scroll quickly back here. Also, if there's questions regarding, look, I don't want to do it. Can someone help me? Our professional services team is very able to help you, or even just think along. Support might also be able to help you with some of these questions, as would I. So I hope this helped a little bit. I hope this helped you see that the boundaries set by the platform are just in pencil. So there's ways of coloring outside of those lines. So I hope this helps you achieve your goals. In any case, have a great rest of your day and see you in the next webinar. Bye.